and you were really talking a lot about overcoming fear, and that you find that a lot in these sorts of sports with martial arts. That is a common theme, is that you are constantly facing physical danger. If you haven't done your homework or you haven't put in the effort, you're going to be exposed. And even if you have done everything right, you can still step in and lose in 10 seconds. It's one of those risks that you've got to take. It's definitely a face your fear kind of sport. And I think, as we were saying a second ago, that's where that humbleness really does come from. And you do find that you can avenue that into other areas of your life where it's sort of like, well, nothing that I have faced today is going to be as hard as that sparring match I had last night, or anything in those terms.
Yeah. So do you think it's that voluntarily facing a challenge, or voluntarily facing that thing that's biggest in front of you, that hardest thing to do, that person you don't want to confront, and you can see that in your own life, whereas previously you weren't in a position to voluntarily face the evils that had confronted you, but as you'd grown and developed your skill set through martial arts, developed your mind, developed your body, you were able to voluntarily now face the imminent physical danger that might be presented to you. And is it from that voluntarily facing that challenge that you've been able to draw a great deal of strength? And do you think that's perhaps the example that you're setting for those people that are around you that look up to you?
Yeah, well, I couldn't agree with you more, to be honest. And probably the first person who ever put it to me like that. And again, it is a voluntary thing. I suppose what I volunteer put it, to be honest, it's never been put to me that way. And I'm going to steal it.
I definitely do that. And when you voluntarily put yourself in front of 50 black belts in order to test yourself, what goes through your mind the night before a challenge like that?
What could I have done?
Yeah.
And then when on the day it's you've got to put all of that behind you and say, like, have you done everything?
Was it a restless night?
I trust that I can pass enough opportunity to get through this. There's no point for regrets at that point. You've got to get through it. And really, what choice have you got? Quit?
Yeah.
Or survive.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a difference too that you see between things is people either survive things or they thrive. And a lot of times with my students, it's not about being absolutely proficient. It's about being adequate enough. And
what led you to be in that position in the first place, to be confronted with that challenge? Was that a progression that you'd worked up to, and something that had been a goal for some time, or was it just an opportunity that presented to you?
Well, I did the 50-man commentator here in Australia with some of my students, and they were doing it for their showdown black belts. And I figured I wasn't going to let them do it on their own. If people think that I can do it, then yeah, I'll give it a shot. Absolutely.
And was there any point during that you thought, can I go on? Should I go on? Is now the time I stop? Or did you feel powerful all the way through many times? Yeah.
Absolutely. Every time I got kicked to the ground, it was just, I just got to get up all the time.
Mm.
Knowing that I still had another 20 rounds ahead of me. And these guys weren't taking it easy.
Yeah.
So I hit the ground, and my legs were like jelly, and I just remember thinking, I've just got to get up.
Yeah.
So I was in Thailand training for my fifth band at the time. I was in Thailand training. I think I was there for 2 months, and then we had to come back to Australia so my students could grade. My teacher came with me, and then straight to the grading. We were going back to Thailand for another 2 months to finish my training camp, and then off to Okinawa for the grading. And what I didn't tell the teacher was that I tore my calf.
Jesus.
I only need it for standing and kicking and, well, everything to do with karate. Yeah.
I didn't tell him that the reason why I tore my calf was because the muscle signals in my legs weren't really working all that well. So I had a spinal injury that was 20 years old. I didn't tell him that either.
Wow.
So, my legs weren't really working, so I ended up I'm getting sort of getting up each time is one more time. Everyone say, just get up one more time. I'm thinking it's going, you are.
That's it.
Wow.
You know, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah. And after that, how long did it take you to recover? What kind of injuries hung around with you for a little while after that?
Also muscle fatigue. I think my body was so well conditioned that you can punch me all day long and I'm not going to get hurt.
Yeah.
I'm sort of notorious for not bruising at all.
Oh.
Been bad for that long, I suppose, and it doesn't happen all that much. And I think if you keep a good percentage of body fat on your body anyway, that also helps to stop bruising.
Yeah, that's my excuse. Yep. Yeah. I'm staying this fat just in case 50 black belts want to take me on.
These fights have got good padding on them because they're fighting every weekend.
Mm-hmm.
You know? So, all of those things help. But, I think after that day I was a little bit battered and bruised. But because my students have just gone through it too, so my concern was pretty much for them. I remember one of them got almost knocked out completely with, I think, in round 10. Some idiot decided to go for a headshot and nearly knock him out. So he was heavily concussed and he was trying to get through that. My wife was actually doing the 50-man commentator.
Oh.
Wow.
So that going through my mind as well. And, plus my other students who were capable. But I suppose knowing that my wife was going through it and knowing that one of my students had also copped a fairly severe head trauma, sort of made me think, well, I've got to stand up strong. I've got to do what these guys are doing. If they're going through it, I've got to do it. And my mind was sort of more focused again towards them than it was for myself. I just wanted to get through it, so I was like, I be there for them. So afterwards, my concern was firstly for my wife, but she was fine. She was ecstatic about it.
Yeah.
Battered and bruised, of course. It was more so for the other student, John, because he was, I think he was 52 when he went through that.
Wow.
So, and a big head kid, in round 10, which really knocked his head off his shoulders, but,
Wow.
you keep your hands up, I suppose.
Yeah.
I just wanted to be there for him.
Are there, having gone through that experience and with people that you know really well, are there any takeaways or is there anything that kind of comes up for people consistently, like any realizations that they might come across having faced a challenge like that? Is there something that's consistent across all people? Are people changed after such an experience?
Yeah, I think there becomes a brotherhood. And there becomes a trust. And I suppose you then realise that you belong to a group or a network that have been through a particular battle. And our system, John Kempo, is kind of famous for that. They've got the old school 80s Uchi, and then they've got the very few people that have graded to black belt since those days. I've been lucky to have 5 of them. So,
Wow.
To have that sort of that brotherhood, I suppose you could call it. But that being said, with no egos involved, sure, you've been able to do this, but you immediately then go and share it and teach others how to do it. You don't keep it to yourself and say, well, I belong to an exclusive club. You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's you've got to share that experience. And you've got to pass it on. You've got to get the next generation through it.
Yeah.
And I think taking away from it is that you're not becoming a fighter, you're becoming a teacher.
Yeah.
But you've got to take your lumps in order to do that.
Yeah, it's almost like with overcoming adversity, if you're doing it with other people and relying on them to keep you safe or to teach you the skills that you're going to be using in combat, those people are the people that become your friends for life in a very short amount of time, because especially if you're going into certain dangerous situations and then you're literally relying on them to have your back, and then it's like if everything goes well and you get through whatever it is that you're trying to get through, whether it's a 100-man kumite, or whether it's, bouncing in a nightclub, or whether it's special forces training or something where it's like it is extremely physically challenging, demanding, potentially dangerous. And once you get through that, those people, the relationships that you form are so much more valuable, or so deeper, connected, as opposed to the people you might see at work that you're just doing your 9 to 5 or that sort of thing. So yeah, it's an interesting
observation.
I suppose it's your ability to be able to be as more raw and honest with those people that you live.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny too. I mean, I've got a very strong relationship with my wife, and always have. But going through that particular experience together was something, because I was also given the opportunity to actually fight her for a last spot.
The final boss.
The final boss. We've reserved this spot for you, Matt.
The mist out of the mist.
The fight.
The Bruce Lee outfit.
Yeah. I wonder what most husbands would do in that situation. I think everybody's slightly conflicted by that challenge. What did you do in that situation?
I begged my teacher for the opportunity, and he said, no, because it's too easy.
Little did he know.
There's notoriously, like, last round has to be the round that finishes you. Has to finish you. I promise, I'll fight us.
Here's my chance. She's going to thank me for it. That's even better.
If you love your wife, you'll fight her as hard as you can.
When I was talking to my wife about your laundry list of achievements, actually, and as we're going through, it was just one thing, and then the next thing just seemed to be more extraordinary than the one before it. And we were going through, and my wife kind of looked at me and said, is he 130 years old or something? Like, how's he achieved so much? And it's like, yeah, I didn't quite feel like a failure in life until I started reading this bio, but now I'm not so sure. When you've achieved so much and it's such a high level, how is it that you now set the next challenges? And no doubt you do have some. And what now sits on your horizon as something you'd like to achieve in the next, within the foreseeable future?
So then, when these opportunities came up to do things like the 50-minute Kumite, the 12-hour fight, and fight in Japan and Thailand, all those things, I guess I committed to them so much that it did take over my life. It was a very, very selfish endeavour. But as any athlete will tell you, I mean, anything like that, it has to be a selfish endeavour.
Yeah.
And it's a funny way to put it, because you've got to give to yourself before you give to anybody else. You can't be expected to be a giver all the time, which I like to do, but you give to yourself as well. So I have these things on my list that I want to do, and I've got these things on my list that I really want to do now, but I kind of can't, because I've recently just had to have another complete spinal fusion. Another one. I had both hips replaced. So I've sort of had these choices made for me. And I'm in a position where I've got a few people who've said, you said you were going to do the 100-minute Kumite, and I was supposed to do it 2 years ago, but I had to have hips replaced, and I'm 48 years old. My daughter's growing up, and my club's growing huge, and do I keep spending so much time overseas? Do I keep doing these things? Do I keep training 6 hours a day? Do I keep all this going? Or do I have to reset now and change things? And that's been the hardest part, is accepting that I can only do what I can do.
Yeah.
But I had the catch-up mentality for so long, trying to prove to whoever it was that I thought I was trying to prove to, that I could do these things and I was capable. And trying to make enough of a name for myself so my students could follow on.
Yeah.
So now my goals are completely different. My goals now are also is to keep myself at a state where, and I'm a long way off, mind you, but to be able to spar with my students again. to be able to teach regular classes again, to be able to operate the business here in a good way, which this opportunity is kind of giving me being not non-physical is giving the opportunity to help my business grow. So I've had to reassess everything, and mentally it's been a really, really tough thing because the way that your self-image and your self-view of yourself changes. And I've got all these people that are new to the club in the last 3 or 4 years. I've only heard stories of what I've done. Can only look back at everybody else says, oh, back in the day, he was this and he used to do that. And that's really hard to accept. That mentally is a barrier and a hurdle I'm trying to overcome now.
Well, that,
I keep telling myself the same thing I tell my students, is that things never end up being what you think they're going to be, but they end up better.
Yeah.
If someone can predict that the people in my life today were going to be the same ones that were in my life 20 years from now, I wouldn't have believed you. The people that are here with me now are not who I thought they were, but they're better.
yeah.
And I suppose the direction that I'm heading now is, it's not what I thought it was going to be, but I know it's going to be better. So I'm not quite sure where things are going to go, to be honest. If I was given the opportunity to fight again, I think I'd want to do it. But then you see things like Evander Holyfield, had horrific.
Yeah.
Just thinking that, yeah.
But the way I see it is he went out on his own terms.
Well, there's a real danger, I think, for a lot of elite athletes, people that have really achieved at an exceptional high level, well, not just in sport, but in life, where there might become a time where in the practical and in the technical, they're not as proficient as what they might have been in their prime. And it takes some time to reconcile that in an elite athlete's mind and to recalibrate so that they're then able to establish a legacy that's not in the physical and the technical and is more in the institutional and in creating a space where people can be nurtured, creating a space where people can feel safe, guided, and that ends up being that springboard for the next generation to not just realise what you've come to experience, but perhaps even go to the next level, and then that becomes part of your legacy and your story. And it sounds like you're in that crossroads now between the physically capable earlier part of your career and that part now where it's a matter of, well, I have done it and I've achieved, and now it's time to pass that on so that others can have the same opportunities and I can set them up in ways that perhaps wasn't available to me in those earlier days. It's that moment when your physicality no longer defines who you are and what your legacy is likely to be. It's a very interesting time that I think a lot of people grapple with, and you've probably come to it a little bit later in life than most, because there's a lot of sports people that are retiring. Well, we had Carly Gangel in the studio just a month or so ago, and she was world champion, retired by the time she was 22 years old. And so she'd gone through that very, very early on. And Jordan Biggie Stevens, international strongman, retired at the age of 31, talking about the next generation, when Matt and I are looking at him thinking, you are the next generation.
Yeah, exactly.
That self-talk and that understanding as to where you fit within the spectrum of experience is a really interesting observation, and interesting, because when you do talk to elite athletes, everybody puts themselves somewhere differently on that spectrum.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same with that identity that you were talking about before. See that a lot. And I was talking about this before with people that are in the gym, and then if they're putting on muscle and they're getting bigger and stronger, and then they're getting their compliments, and they wrap their identity around that, and they become, I'm a big strong guy and that's who I am. And then if anything goes wrong, whether they get injured or throughout the process of aging or something, where you're not able to maintain that, and then you start to, in your own mind, lose your identity, and it's like, oh no, I'm not who I am anymore. And you can see the spiral of depression, or people but if they're able to find something, a different meaning or a different path or a different thing that they can sort of put their passion and time and effort into. It's like, well, this is me now. And I sort of saw that with, Dorian Yates, who was Mr. Olympia for 6-time Mr. Olympia. And, enormous bodybuilder. And then when he retired, he was still training just as hard as when he was in the competition in competitive times. But I remember, I think maybe it was about 6 months he did that after his retirement. And then one day he was just like, why am I doing this? Why am I trying
What's my purpose?
Why am I trying to maintain this humongous body? Is it to just please the strangers that I don't know that are possibly giving me compliments? Because he was so wrapped up in the identity of I'm Mr. Olympia, and when people meet or see me, I must be this enormous guy. And it wasn't only through the process of maturity that he was able to go, well, no, I shouldn't be relying on other people's opinions to form my own self-worth. So, now he still trains because he likes it, but he's not trying to be this enormous monster, just to please anybody else. So, yeah, it's really interesting to hear you saying that.
It comes down to maturity. I think I've been blessed with my late start and my late finish, I suppose, where I've had the maturity to be able to look at it through older eyes and accept that things are not quite that hard.
It sounds like you're at work at the moment. You've got the banner up in the background. So tell us a little bit about how people can find out more about you and ultimately how can they learn personally from you?
Casey Elite Martial Arts in Cranbourne, Victoria. We teach full contact karate, of course, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, kickboxing, and we also specialise with self-defence class. Plus, we've got full GMP and all the PTs and all that stuff. You can jump on the website, www.kcelitemartialarts.com.au. But we'll get there, absolutely. We were the biggest. We will be the biggest again. And I just can't wait.
Fantastic. Well, Matt, thanks so much for your time and certainly appreciate you sharing your story with us. And I'm sure there's plenty there for people to be able to draw upon for inspiration, and anybody who's not just looking to become a world champion, but to become the very best person that they can possibly be, would be able to learn an enormous amount from the podcast that we've just shared. So thank you very much, Matt, for being on the podcast, and we certainly look forward to chatting to you more again very, very soon. Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, Matthew Charles.